What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and it is officially the day the Marvels comes to theaters. Are you excited? Can you just feel the anticipation radiating through your body? I bet you can't wait to spend some time at your local theater to witness the girl power oozing from the silver screen. Alright, fine, let's be real, the movie's going to flop, and according to one journalist, it's men's fault because of course it is. Beyond this hilariously out-of-touch story, we got Disney's Bob Iger admitting defeat. And the future of our society is going to be even more pandering. And you'll never guess what's upsetting people now. I'll talk about that one later in the video. Also, since this is a video about Disney and I've been playing Liza P recently, which is based on Pinocchio, I'm going to use some sick gameplay I've gathered of my playtime with it. Anyway, to start, please don't harass this journalist, they already sat through the Marvels, so I figured they've been punished enough as is. However, what they're saying here is the fallout of years of Hollywood making feminist content, telling men to not see it because it's not for them, then complaining that they don't see it when it fails. It's the Charlie's Angels remake all over again. Anyway, this journo works for Screen Rant, and they decided to not blame their corporate masters for creating the box office bomb that is the Marvels, but instead it's men's fault for being born male. Oh boy, let's read what they have to say. It's really interesting to me that it's all men who are actively hating on the Marvels. The movie isn't perfect, read my review for my thoughts, but it doesn't deserve the hate many men are giving it. As you can expect, this journalist has opened the floodgates while pandering to her masters at the same time. It's always men's fault when women don't succeed, of course. And never the fact that the women who made this didn't think to cater to the overwhelming male audience that primarily supports these movies. Look, I'm not saying women don't watch Marvel movies, they do. But it's like video games as well. Men are just the primary target demographic for these sorts of things. It's the same way on the reverse when it comes to makeup and fashion, which is exponentially supported by the female customer base. That doesn't make makeup stores like Sephora or clothing stores sexist because women buy more of that sort of thing. It's just that the two genders have different things that they are inherently into. Is it a societal thing? Is it baked into our DNA? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm a guy on YouTube who drinks coffee and plays video games. But what I do know is that making something within a male-dominated space for women almost exclusively has mostly never worked. Anyway, one user questioned this journalist's very pro-feminism brain, to which she replied, "No, not my point at all. I am one of the fresh ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Look at the rotten ratings. Mostly men. Mostly white men." At the critic screening last night, multiple men had their mind made up, complaining about watching it before it started. And there you go. Yet again, these pandering journalists keep failing to understand why things are the way they are. Her point of saying men don't like women in movies is just a blatant lie. After all, what is the highest grossing movie of the year? Oh right, it's Barbie. A movie made for women, by women, but the difference between Barbie and the Marvels is that the brand Barbie is directly associated with female demographics, the same way makeup, fashion, and I guess Starbucks lattes are. While I personally don't care for Barbie, probably because it's not made for me, it resonated with female moviegoers and they supported it. It made over $1 billion, but again, it's because Barbie isn't attached to a greater franchise that is primarily catered to, or used to be anyway, to male audience members. Of course, women read comic books, but let's not pretend and live in this fantasy world where everything is 50-50, because it's not. You and I both know when it comes to things like video games, comics, or things like Magic the Gathering and so on, these spaces are primarily hosts to male customers. It doesn't make video games or comics sexist, but what it does mean is that if you want your product to sell, within those spaces, you have to cater to the audience as more willing to part with their money. And the reality is that the average male customer who takes one look at the Marvels and it kind of tells them everything that they need to know, which is that it's just not made for them. And that's not necessarily just because it stars a bunch of women, but because Hollywood and industries like gaming have made it their objective to talk down to their male customers when it comes to these things. The Marvels is a movie made within a franchise supported primarily by male customers, and it's being advertised as talking down to them. And it's being forced into their faces by journalists like the Screen Rant one to accept or call them sexist or some form of phobic. You don't win people over by attacking them. Saying your audience is a bunch of sexist, misogynistic losers is just going to do the direct opposite. It's not men's duty to support female-made products, and it's the same the other way around too. And I love it when that journo goes ahead and blames white men primarily as the reason the film will fail. Or they'll say things like they don't like it because a woman wrote it. As if that matters at all. There's been plenty of movies released that have been written by men and directed by men too that have sucked ass. Quantumania had a male director and writers. That movie sucked. Is that sexist to say because it was primarily men who made it? What about The Expendables that came out this year that is heavily male dominated yet it also bombed? Was that also sexist? The answer to all of this and more is no, dear viewer, it isn't. The Marvels is like a sobering splash of cold water on the caked up, overweight faces of feminists everywhere. You want to be treated equally to your male counterparts, then you have to face criticism and failure the same way they do as well. You don't get a free pass anymore just because you're a woman. Didn't you all fight for years to have equal rights? Now look at you, working for corporations like the rest of us, being taxed out of your mind, tired from working constantly and having to pay your own bills. Bravo to the feminist women everywhere. You did it. You found the cheat code. You've officially become as downtrodden and miserable as the men of the world as well. If you want to be treated equally, that isn't just in positive ways. The bad comes with the good too. The Marvels is just the next big bomb from Disney. I mean, look at this handy chart showing every movie released by Disney in 2023. Everything on that list, apart from Guardians 3, has underperformed and not turned a profit. A lot of the movies on that list, by the way, were directed by men. So does that make audiences at large sexist, including the women? I don't think so. I just think audiences are sick and tired of being fed slop at every opportunity imaginable. Companies are learning the hard way that you can't just make the same movie over and over again and then you expect good results. But I also hear the gotcha of, well, Captain Marvel made $1 billion, so why can't the Marvels? That one always annoys me because the people who say it always ignore the period that Captain Marvel came out in and what it was piggybacking off of. Captain Marvel came out after Infinity War but before Endgame, arguably the most hyped period for the MCU. Infinity War's ending devastated audiences and had kids crying and they had them clamoring for more. And Marvel smartly teased Captain Marvel at the end of that movie. This of course led to the movie having that hype and build up during a period of great interest. So it's no wonder why it made $1 billion. The same could be said about Iron Man 3 too. That came out immediately following the Avengers, which was a very similar hype level. Everybody was crazy for the Avengers back then, so whatever happened next could be using that momentum to great effect. So that's why Iron Man 3 did so well. Captain Marvel wasn't the only movie that benefited during that period too. Remember that Ant-Man and the Wasp came out after Infinity War as well. And that movie, which I personally don't think was a good movie at all, by the way, it was also directed and written by men, so we're clear, made 3 times its budget back at $622 million. Ant-Man 2, like Captain Marvel, made an inflated amount because of the hype of Infinity War and Endgame. What we're seeing this year is the sequels to both Ant-Man 2 and Captain Marvel severely underperforming. But again, it's because they don't have the hype to ride to victory anymore. They have to achieve their own success with their own movie now, and what did we end up getting? Quantumania bombed, and the Marvels will likely do the same. So are fans sexist because they didn't like or support Paul Rudd's third movie? By the way, he's a straight white male, so you tell me. Or could it be that the movie just wasn't very good and audiences have become tired of the same movie formulas and phases 4 and 5 of the MCU, they just don't hold a candle to phase 3? That's the more likely scenario here. Captain Marvel has to now exist and succeed on her own 2 feet. And ironically, without the help of piggybacking off of characters like Thor and Cap, the results are what they are because that's what it is. I mean, you know it's bad when the Marvel's final trailer, which I can't show because Disney loves copywriting stuff, but that trailer uses Avengers theme music and it has scenes from Infinity War and Endgame, and even uses characters like Iron Man and Captain America in order to drum up hype. The reception to the Marvels is so bad that Disney has resorted to parading Tony's dead corpse and Cap's retired shield like a pair of jangling keys in order to get people to watch it. The movie, according to Deadline, is currently slated to make around $140 million in its opening weekend worldwide. That is abysmal for a movie that cost $300 million. That's the Flash levels of bad. Mind you that Five Nights at Freddy's, which cost $20 million to make, that movie made around $130 million in its opening weekend. And you don't need to be good at math to compare a $20 million budget movie making the same in its opening weekend compared to a $300 million one. The budgets are just overblown, the interest is simply not there anymore. I've been listening to other YouTubers like Jeremy Johns who suggest that Marvel just needs to take a break, dude. Reassess, give people some time to yearn for another MCU film, and then come back stronger than ever with a new mindset and plan. But we know that won't happen because Disney's investors will get angry if they don't keep releasing more stuff in order to make money. Then ironically enough, you have Screen Rant themselves who published an article recently titled, "We Lost Some Focus, Disney's Recent Box Office Disappointments Addressed by CEO." During an earnings call with investors, Bob Iger responded to the dire state of Disney right now. The Hollywood Reporter was able to get Iger's statement during this moment, to which he said, and I quote, "That said, as I looked at our overall output, meaning the studio, it's clear that the pandemic created a lot of challenges creatively for everybody, including for us. In addition, at the time the pandemic hit, we were leaning into a huge increase in how much we were making, and I've always felt that quantity can actually be a negative when it comes to quality, and I think that's exactly what happened. We lost some focus. We're all rolling up our sleeves, including myself, to do just that. We have obviously great assets, great stories to tell from the assets that we either have or that we purchased. And I feel really optimistic about the slate going forward, which is going to be a balance between some really strong sequels to some very, very popular titles, as well as some good original content starting with Wish, which comes out Thanksgiving weekend. So I feel good about the direction we're headed, but I'm mindful of the fact that our performance from a quality perspective wasn't really up to the standards that we set for ourselves." End quote. Well, Bobby Boy's right about one thing, which is that the COOF absolutely did screw up Hollywood and many others. Actually, that's also why the gaming industry has so many games coming out in 2023. Most of these games were severely delayed because of the pandemic. So in case you're wondering why gaming in particular is so crowded this year, well, there's your answer. And remember, you had movies coming out right when the pandemic started that just tanked because obviously no one was willing to leave their houses. That's why Bloodshot and Birds of Prey both tanked horrendously. People were either forced inside when these movies came out, or they just refused to leave. But that being said, what Iger Baby is saying here is ignoring the main problem. Disney has been making slop, and all of this slop, whether he'll admit it or not, is because of him. Bob Iger is the dummy that has signed off on these projects that keep coming to light. The Marvels and Quantum Snooze didn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone had to sign off on these insanely high budgets. And like I said recently on the Critical Drinkers Open Bar, these things won't change anytime soon. Bob Iger is still the CEO of Disney until 2026. So all of the decisions we're seeing unfold in real time this year were decisions Bob signed off on and approved back during 2020 or 2021. So if the guy who keeps making mistakes is telling us they are confident in their future, then announces a bunch of movies that sound like more slop. I mean, come on guys, really? Best case scenario is we're dealing with a Bob Iger-led Disney decision and content he signed off on until at least 2030. That is, of course, if Iger ends up serving his entire CEO time like he's supposed to until 2026. Of course, projects take time to make, and if he's been signing off on misfires like Snow White, The Marvels, and Haunted Mansion, then what do you think you're going to get in the future from a company under his control? Slop, my friends. Slop. Lots and lots of it. I think Az from Heel vs. Babyface perfectly sums up why the Marvels will fail, where he said this on Twitter. Marvel have shifted their desired audience from boys to adult men with disposable income to middle-aged women who don't give a shit about this at all. And he's right. Whether they will admit it, which they won't, the MCU and Star Wars 2 are male-dominated from a consumer perspective. You're trying to appeal your $300 million misfire to women who spend money on wine, scented candles, and like going out to brunch. They don't care about the Marvels. If you did want to get women's butts in seats, you would actually do it the old-fashioned way. You would actually give them big, husky men with bulging muscles in your advertising. I mean, sure, Thor Love and Thunder was bad, but you can't deny that marketing the film with a scene where Thor is naked didn't at least amount to some women showing up to support the movie. If you want to get women to support your product, you gotta give them what they want. And that's not a bunch of annoying girl bosses who smash the patriarchy. You actually, ironically enough, give them kind of what men want too, which is strong male characters that are actually manly and are men of action. And then you sprinkle in a topless man scene once or twice and the women are happy. And the guys show up because the movie is actually about a strong man instead of some skinny women screaming at them for 2 hours. And as I was making this video, Disney has now confirmed their future plans for their dying brand, with only one MCU film coming out next year, with that being Deadpool 3 on July 26, 2024. While this is a good move, mostly because it'll give audiences a good deserved break, plus Deadpool 3 will likely do very well if it retains what the first two were like. However, in 2025, things get messy again with 4 MCU films in 1 year. Those films being Captain America 4 on February 14, 2025, Fantastic Four on May 2nd, Thunderbolts on July 25th, and Blade on November 7th. Those are all potential heavy hitter movies, but according to rumors released among this, apparently Captain America 4 is having 3 major sequences reshot after early screen tests for the film came back very negative. So we might get some reprieve in 2024, but we could be in real MCU slop come 2025. Remember that Blade has been rewritten multiple times with a feminist slant. And Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, at this point, who knows, dude. Apparently, Fantastic Four does take place on an alternate Earth where the first family are the only superheroes. And the villain is Galactus, and my hope is that the film ends with Earth getting eaten by Galactus. And the Fantastic Four escape and they somehow enter the MCU proper at the end, knowing the threat that Galactus is. But maybe I'm giving Marvel too much credit at this point to make a story that's interesting, but we'll see. Also, it was recently reported that Disney has lost $387 million in the most recent quarter. However, they have jumped from 146.7 million subscribers to 150 million, so I guess that's something. And it's also been confirmed that Disney will be spending even less money going into next year on their entertainment, with around $3 billion less than last year, which is already down from previous years too. So that about catches you up as of quite literally the right end now when it comes to Disney, Marvel, and their failures and admittedly some victories. But it's still not looking great, and they're not out of the woods yet, it seems. But now, here's this other story that's completely unrelated, but it's ridiculous, and I just want you to know about it. Do you like birds, dear viewer? Well, guess what now? You're a racist. The American Ornithological Society, which documents all the birds of our world, has announced that they'll be changing the names of certain species. So according to these bird people, they are changing the names of certain birds like Cooper's hawk, Stellar Jay, Wilson's warbler, and Anna hummingbird. Why do you ask? Well, according to them, these names are offensive because they are named after the people who discovered them, and these people are, you guessed it, white people. Colleen Handel, who's led this group, said, "We've come to understand that there are certain names that have offensive or derogatory connotations that cause pain to people. And that is important to change those to remove those as barriers to their participation in the world of birds." Ah yes, pain, dear viewer. Don't you feel sadness and triggered knowing some bird out there crapping on someone's car was named after a scientist or whatever? And this, according to this Colleen lady, causes pain to people? Jesus Christ, dude, these people can't do anything without crying, can't they? Yeah, I know this story has nothing to do with the Marvels or whatever, but I just found it so ridiculous that I had to share it. Mostly to prove that this is a state of our collective conscience right now. People have it so good that they're actively seeking out anything and everything in order to feel oppressed. And now we've reached the point where the names of birds are problematic. Oh, modern world, you are so dumb, I hate it here. Anyway, the Marvel sucks, Bob Iger is out of touch, and birds are racist, I guess. Anyway, as always, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks to my patrons as always, and have a great day. This world is ridiculous, dude. I'm tired. I'm gonna go play video games now. Take care of yourselves, drink plenty of water, and I'll see you in the next one.